In this video, we're going to show you how to set up the communication, the Ethernet communication between an M221 PLC and an M241 PLC. Let's begin by taking a look at the programming software for the M221 Machine Expert Basic. Machine Basic can also be used to configure it, just depending on which version of software you're working with. So let's begin with the configuration of the M221 first. So in my office, I've got the M221 CE16R. First thing we're going to do is we're going to configure the Ethernet port of the PLC. Gateway is not mandatory. I'm setting a gateway because I use a gateway in my office for all my field bus devices. You must set the security parameters to permit Ethernet IP protocol. I'm also going to use programming protocol to be enabled so that I can program it over the Ethernet channel. Properties here, and I'm not going to use any password protection on this. We need to have at least one active rung in the program here, so we're just gonna use input 0 to trigger output 0. Let's go back to the configuration here. Oops. Okay, the next step after you set your IP address for the PLC, select the Ethernet IP adapter and enable this function. M221 supports a maximum of 40 words, 20 in and 20 out. We cannot go anything greater than that. For this test, I'm not going to use all 40. If you wanted to use, let's say 10 for example, here and 10 here, I'm actually only going to use 4 and 4. Okay, and apply. So the M221 is going to generate words, and it's going to be sending at 100 and receiving at 150. You will need the EDS file for the M241 to import into the programming environment for the M241, which will be So Machine or Machine Expert. The EDS file that you're going to need is nested in the installation package for Machine Expert Basic or So Machine Basic, you're going to navigate to the program files, x86, Schneider Electric. For me, it's Machine Expert Basic. If you're using So Machine Basic, you would be looking in that folder. And it's in the firmware and post configuration. You're looking for the EDS file that's nested in the M221 folder. I already moved that earlier, but I'll take that file and I'm going to copy it over to the desktop so that I can move it over to the host machine for the M241. This section is basically finished for the communication to function. So we're going to log into my M221 and we're going to transfer this project to it. And we're going to go over to the Machine Expert software and program the M241. Okay, so now we're looking at the programming software for the M241. I haven't started with the project yet. The first thing I want to do is I want to import in the tools section here. I'm going to go to the device repository and I'm going to install a new device. That's the EDS file from the M221, and I copied that EDS file over to a shared folder because this is the other project is running on a virtual machine. So here's that EDS file and I'm going to import that, and it's now been imported into the Machine Expert software. And now I can start creating my project. So a new project, we'll just say an empty project here. And first step is I'm going to add my PLC type. I have an M241 CEC 24T. To the device tree here, I'm going to populate an IP address for my M241. It obviously needs to be in the same IP range as the M221 so the two can speak to one another. And we'll just use this one at address 10.0.0.141. Must be on the same subnet. 255. And of course, because I'm working from an office where I use a gateway, I'm going to include the gateway in this one also. Build that. Next step is to go back to this device tree and right click on the Ethernet 1 and add a device. We need to add a protocol manager. We need to add the industrial Ethernet manager. Adding the industrial Ethernet manager, I can now right click on here, add another device, and the EDS file that I imported will now permit me to add the M221, and it's going to show up for me it populated in this other folder. So there's the M221, which was created from me importing that M221 EDS file. So I'm going to add that device. And we can close that. Now we can configure communication between the M221 and the M241. So the M221, the IP address that I had configured in it is 10.0.0.200. Your next step is to go to the Connections tab. The EDS file, this is important to note that the EDS file by default will be configuring the program to write data. All 40 will be used to write data. So what I want to do is I want to delete that connection. And I want to add a new connection. And instead of choosing to just write data, I want to be able to exchange data back and forth, so I'm going to use the read from and write to. And again, for my test, I'm not going to use all. I only want to use 4, so let's reduce the size of these. Okay. And let me build this. And now we go to the Ethernet I/O mapping, and we can see the input words and we can see the output words. This program, from a functional standpoint, will be able to exchange data back and forth between the M221 and this M241. So let's build this. Let's log into the M241. And we're going to transfer this project into the M241. Program has been loaded, and it already sees the connection to the M221. And let's start the project. So, program's running in the M241. Let's jump over to the virtual machine where the program is in the M221, and let's start the controller. Okay. I'm going to go to the programming section for the M221, and on the left over here we're going to go to the tools, animation tables. We're going to right click this, and I'm going to add a new animation table. That animation table is down here, and that's going to give me the ability to actively view these input and output words that are coming from the M221 to the M241 and vice versa. The input assembly here, the output assembly here. So we get IWE0 through 3 and QWE0 all the way through 3. So in my animation table, I want to begin adding those. Percent QWE0, we'll add that one. Let's add 1 also. 2 and 3. And we want to look at the input words IWE0, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Program's running. These variables are visible now in my animation table. And let's let's bounce back over to the M241 program, and let's prepare a value here to send data to the M221. We'll just put in there 123. On this one we'll send 567, and maybe here we'll do 987. So these are prepared, and if I send that data, or write that data I should say, write those values, so they've been written to the M241, which is sending that data to the M221. Now to send the other direction from the M221, we'll do 432. Oops, 432, enter. Whatever, 765, enter. 987, enter. And 246, enter. It's 432, 765, 987, 246. If we bounce over to the M241 project, that data has been received. Now that we're able to see that data can be exchanged, let's take the next step in the programming. Let me disconnect. So we know we could receive data and send data, and perhaps I want to assign that data to some variables that are in my M241. Let's go ahead and create, let's just create some variables here.
Okay, we've got some global variables
created. Now if we go back to our input and output words here, we can assign those to the global variables. Let's build that. And write that to the PLC and we'll test it. So now that we've created those global variables and assigned them to the input and output words between the M241 and M221, let's take a look at these. So let's go back over to the virtual machine. Let's prepare some values here. 1, 2, 3, enter. 6, 5, 4, enter. And 7, 8, 9, enter. And I don't know, 4, 3, 2, enter. Let's check on the M241. There we are. And let's send data from the M241 to the M221. We'll just do 111 here. Second word, we'll make that 222. 333 and 444. Those are prepared. Debug and write those values. And let's go back to the virtual machine, and there they are. 111, 222, 333, and 444. So, data exchange is working in the M241 PLC. The variables that are coming back and forth between the M241 and the M221, we could bring those over to global variables and do with them what we will. So I hope you learned a little something, and I hope this helps you with programming the communication between M221 and M241 via Ethernet. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.